1966 to 1972, I was an airfield defence guard. I had my first experience of Iroquois helicopters at Fairburn Air Force Base, being what they called a teabag, winched up and down from the parade ground, and a few rides in helicopters while we were there. I went to Vietnam a couple of times, and my second trip in 1970-71, I spent as a door gunner. I volunteered, as quite a number of airfield defence guards had, to become door gunners. And in fact, the helicopter beside me here, my second day of training as a door gunner, was on this very helicopter. And if you can picture it taking off from Neweydat with 15 people on board, we're quite literally getting ready to go, and we kept on getting people coming up, Americans and Australians. Where you going? Where you going? Oh, we're going here, we're going there, we're going everywhere. Oh, I'm going to this particular place. Can I get a lift? Yeah, climb on board. Now, of course, we were hooked up to the fuselage of the aircraft by what we called a monkey strap, big strap buckled around our waist and hooked up to the fuselage. And in fact, one of my mates on what we called a hash and trash, taking hot boxes of food out to a fire support base. On the way back, an empty hot box fell out. His skipper asked him to move forward and make sure nothing else fell out. Well, he fell out. So he's got his safety, his monkey strap on, hooked up to the fuselage, dangling below the skids, and it took, I believe, the co-pilot, the crewman and a passenger to drag him back up. And I'm told that he was quite visibly shaken and still trembling after a few beers in the Airmen's Club later on that day. It's strange that I have a great deal of difficulty climbing up ladders, yet I had no problem at all in sitting in a helicopter and doing the job. On one of the battalions returning home, I was the gunner on a chopper that did 27 trips to the ship from Neweydat. Load up with troops, fly out, drop them off, fly back to Neweydat, back forward. So that was a big day. I became qualified as a door gunner on gunships. When it came time to providing support to Army units that were in strife, if we were on the gunships, we would go out, we'd be getting indications of where to lay down our suppression fire. The pilots got very, very good at operating the Gatling machine guns and the rocket pods, and we would linger as long as we could while the guys were in strife, until such time as either fuel or ammunition forced us to go back. The Iroquois with 9 Squadron included obviously medevacs. I had one where we were hovering above the jungle. I was the gunner. Crewman was winching up a wounded patient from the combined Anzac company. The contact was still happening down below. What we as the crew didn't know as we were carrying on with our tasks was that a pair of American Cobra gunships had been authorised to come in and do firing passes. There were some very expletive deleted comments when they opened up with their rockets and machine guns. We didn't know what the devil was going. We were concentrating on what was happening. The medevac's landing pad at No. 1 Hospital at Bung Tau was named Vampire Pad. So if you were heading into Vampire Pad, they knew that you had some seriously wounded people on board. Some of them didn't make it, of course, but then, of course, the medevacs would happen with the C-130s taking them to Butterworth and then back on to Australia and all that sort of stuff. One of the other tasks was a thing called sniffer. Aircraft rigged up like this. They had a meter box in the fuselage, pipes going out onto the skids. They would bring air into the machine. It could read the air and the components in it, and if there was smoke or sulphur, that might indicate an enemy camp. Another flight back from Neweydat as a gunner, within about 5 to 10 minutes or 5 minutes of Neweydat, we would disarm the guns. As I completed doing that, I looked up and there was a pair of South Vietnamese Sky Raider propeller-driven aircraft flying past the left of the aircraft, and the closest pilot to me had this huge grin on, and I'm thinking to myself, oh my heavens, if he'd been an enemy, I was gone. But he just smiled and waved. We did a lot of support to the SAS, amongst other things. Apparently they had some pretty good parties, although I never went to one, but quite a few of my mates did. I was the gunner on the helicopter that brought out the last SAS patrol, and when we picked them up, they'd been in water up to about their thighs for quite some time, clearing the area and making sure that everything was secure. If they got bumped, they wanted to be out of the area very, very quickly. They did have a very, very good working relationship with the squadron. Sadly, it was a member of the SAS. I'm not sure whether he was a signaller or a trooper, one of the 6 that was missing in action at the end of the Vietnam conflict. They'd been in strife. 9 Squadron helicopter had come across. They couldn't land, so they'd thrown ropes down, something the patrols had practiced many times. Hook onto the rope and away you go. Unfortunately, with this gentleman, something went wrong. He fell about 60 metres and he couldn't be recovered. It was about 17 years ago that an army team located his body along with the 3 other soldiers that were missing in action in Vietnam. My time with 9 Squadron was a little bit hectic. During the 6 months I was there, we lost at least 5 helicopters. One in which one of my mates on the same Airfield Defence Guard course was a crewman, and he was medevac back to Australia. The skipper of that aircraft and the gunner had been killed. The co-pilot stayed in Vietnam, although he'd been injured. He recovered and went back flying. It was a good time, but when those 2 aircraft got shot down, I started to wonder what the hell I was doing there. I did have subsequent interaction with Iroquois at one time up at Butterworth as a supplier. I donned the flight suit again for an air display up there and fired some blank rounds from the gun as the gunner. My mate Peter stayed with helicopters post-Vietnam. Sadly, in 1974 on a flood relief mission flying out of Ambley, he was on a helicopter that crashed somewhere out the other side of Warwick. He was killed instantly. The skipper of the aircraft, a gentleman named Reg Van Leuven, died in hospital the next day. I'd flown with both of them in Vietnam, and you know, you survive a war zone and come back and get killed in a peace mission. Oh, just sorry.
Oh, yeah.
The emblem.
Oh, yeah.
The emblem for the squadron goes back to its days as a virtually a naval cooperation squadron, and Albatross was the call sign for the slicks. So in Vietnam, so you might have a fly to 4, so 0102 0304, that sort of stuff.
Cool.
That's it. I'm out of verve.